Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is October 20th, 2022. Long time no see. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We have a space weather update tonight, and also we have an outlook on our 2022-2023 winter. I found a video that I wanted to share with everybody that I thought would be very beneficial, because it's not just another video that claims, oh, it's going to be cold and terrible and snowy. This guy brings up a lot of good points about why we're going to see such a bad winter, and it's not just about La Nina or the fact that it's a triple dip. There's so much to go over. But anyway, let's do our space weather update first. Our solar wind speeds coming in at 416.3 kilometers per second with a density of 7.21. Now, I have been absent, and I do apologize to those who eagerly await these reports. But I do want to report that over the last 4 weeks, I saw solar wind speeds as low as 246 kilometers per second. Now, I know I'm the rogue one here saying that we're already in the beginning phase of our maximum. And a lot that is based on the work of Valentina Zarkova, her forecasting model that shows a quick max and then a pretty steep decline into a new minimum, perhaps by mid-2024, maybe as early as late 2023. I'm not going to push it. I'm going to say we're probably going to see the beginning of the next minimum early 24 to mid-24. But nonetheless, we have been talking about this being a weak maximum solar cycle. Solar or sunspot numbers were as high as 146 just about a week or so ago. We're quiet again at 50. There's that reoccurring coronal hole in the southern part of our star. And the interesting thing is that a lot of you folks out there pointed out that some of these sunspot regions have returned to the 20-degree area. But remember, the beginning of a solar cycle starts around the 30. And yes, some of these are snapping back into place, but some of them are drifting back towards the equatorial region of our sun as well. So these things snap back and forth like rubber bands. And one thing that we have to remember too about this particular grand solar minimum coming up is that usually with these things we have two magnetic fields going out of phase. This one we have all four. So when you have all four going out of phase, we're talking about little ice age potential conditions. And we're already seeing that just by how weak the magnetosphere is here because of the weak connection from our star. TSI is definitely lower. We don't get to see that information anymore, but we've seen much more action from a sun in its maximum than what we're seeing right now. That's for sure. I was confused. I thought we were looking at minimum sun here. But no, we do see a lot of bright active regions here. I'll point those out and I'll explain. This is not sunspots yet, folks. These have not been labeled as qualifying sunspots. Now, up here, yes, I do expect to possibly see this area become circled next and could be our next area of sunspot numbers. This one right here, I believe this coronal hole, that used to be the sunspot that was inside that coronal hole. Well, this one is now being labeled. And then these right here are going away. So tomorrow we could just wake up with this one here and then this one newly approaching. Still no sunspot number or grouping or anything like that from here. It's just what they call plaque. Very bright active regions, but no dark cores to qualify it as sunspots. So interesting how we get these days where sometimes we'll see 146 for the maximum of sunspot numbers in a day, sometimes as high as 156. We saw it go to 173 in the very beginning of what I thought was the beginning of the maximum, which was a few months ago. And since then, it's wavered between 176, it drops to 140, it goes up to 150, it goes back down to 130, and then back down or back up to 160. So it's been hovering in between that area and dropping down as low. Right now we're at 50. And I expect tomorrow or possibly the day after to be lower than that. But do not be fooled. It is not because of any lack of sunspots that are on the way, because we will start seeing more sunspots. In fact, we'll go to our website here in a second. Right now, we're looking at a KP indice of 1 and 24-hour max of a 2. And this is where, even though this coronal hole is pretty far south, we're up here, all right? So this is not really directly affecting us. But I do expect, because of how low the KP indices are right now, and this is a pretty wide coronal hole, so this is going to have some very fast-moving solar wind. I do expect it to kind of, what they say, ring the bell, so to speak, on the magnetosphere, and it wouldn't be surprising to see another strong 6.7 or 7.1 earthquake in the next 24 to 36 hours. Now, we have had some activity from our sun lately, as far as earthquake activity, one in Central America today. So we will keep our eyes on any kind of seismic activity here in the next 24 to 36 hours to see if maybe we get another one that's as strong. Hopefully this next seismic activity is away from land and nowhere in an area where it could do any harm. But we will keep our eyes open. And also a G1 storm watch in effect for October 23rd, 2022. A very, very slight chance that this solar wind does impact enough to create a small geomagnetic storm, a G1. That's only a KP of 5. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we just kind of flirted with unsettled conditions with a KP of 4 on the 23rd. But nonetheless, conditions are favorable for a G1, and also to be on the lookout for some possible strong seismic activity as well. Another thing I want to mention is I was talking to Mari about this the other day. You know, folks always question the link between seismic activity and the sun. And since we started covering this upcoming maximum, since we've said it's begun, you've noticed we haven't had any major volcano eruptions. We haven't seen any major continuous earthquakes. Remember, during 2016 through 2020, non-stop earthquake, non-stop volcanic activity. We're not hearing about that anymore because we're in a maximum. Magnetosphere is stronger, and there are less cosmic rays escaping into our atmosphere. But that's not the case either. Now, here we are in a maximum, or in the beginning part of a maximum, and we're still seeing a positive rate of 3.4% dosage rate of cosmic radiation in our atmosphere. 5% and higher is considered minimum conditions, okay? We are not, based on the cosmic radiation, this should not correlate with maximum conditions. So that's why there's so many people out there on the fence about whether or not we are in a maximum. But when you see all these sunspots and all these coronal holes, and we're not really seeing much but a G1 here, a G1 there, an M flare. We had a couple of weak X flares that were non-Earth facing. So to me, this just feels like a weak batch of activity from our star because of this cycle that is going to be weaker than, or just as weak as last one. But I feel like this one, just from being able to observe solar cycle 24 from 2015 and beyond, so I know what a minimum looks like and heading into a maximum. So it'll be interesting watching us tone down again from the maximum into a minimum. I think I'll get a better understanding on the comparison of this cycle and the last cycle as far as strengths. But just from what I've observed so far, I am not seeing anything that would indicate that this is a normal maximum cycle. This is a normal anything solar cycle. All right, let's go over to the grandsolarminimum.com, our website. Take a look really quick at the backside of our sun. There's that Earth-facing coronal hole, but again, it is far below that 0 there for the elliptical. Here, let me get the handy-dandy arrow out there. Here's where Earth would be on that scale. So, as you can see, it's going to miss us, but it's still a possibility. This could still impact our magnetosphere, I should say, magnetic field. And here's a look at what we have in the books coming up. As you see on the northeastern limb, there's a lot of activity that is about to approach. But again, those are not necessarily all sunspots either now. And this could also be more plaque is what they call it. Without the dark cores, it is not a sunspot. So in the northeastern limb, we're watching that batch of active groupings. Could be sunspot activity. We are seeing C-class flares crackling from it now. So chances are this will be our next sunspot grouping. But again, we have some low numbers considering the fact where we are in this particular solar cycle. Let's take a look at some more quick stats before we move on. Actually, no, that's really all I wanted to go over with space weather. Watch out for earthquakes the next 24 to 36 hours, 6.7 to 7.1. Possible. Not a guarantee. This one's a weak chance, but it's there. And then, of course, the possible G1 storm on the 23rd of October. Very, very slight chance for that as well. All right, so the main reason why I brought everyone out here tonight is because I wanted to go over this very, very, very explanative or explanative. What's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, folks, I'm a little rusty here. But what we want to see tonight is the why. Why are we hearing so many things about why this winter is going to be a doozy? And you can't find a lot of other than, the triple dip La Nina. Well, tonight I'm going to go over this video, and I'm not going to talk over much of it because if I do, we'll be here till midnight. So what I want to do is just kind of let him explain everything. I might stop it once or twice to, quickly bring up a point, but this guy does a really good job. There's really nothing to, commentate for him, but I want you folks to see the reasons why we're talking about this winter being unique, and not just because we are on a channel that favors global cooling or anything like that. This is strictly to the facts. A lot of people out there in the AGW world want to say that we don't look at the data, that we don't look at the facts, that we don't look at any science. And I want everyone to explain to me tonight, when this video is over in the next 17 minutes, how this is not science. Tell me what part of this is not science. Where is the false information here in this video? Please tell me. All right, let's get started with tonight's presentation. And trust me, I will make sure the mute button is off. Here we go.
We're going to go over 3 key elements for this upcoming winter that I feel is going to make this winter very unique and very cold. So let's start off with the first element, which is your La Nina. Now, we've been actually in a La Nina all the way back since September of 2020. And this is the latest update from the Climate Prediction Center for your October. You can see it highlighted in the blue shaded area. That is your La Nina. They not only have it continuing all the way through fall, but they've actually got a 75% chance that actually continues all the way through the winter months, and now really expecting to go possibly flipping into more of a neutral conditions, probably sometime in your March timeframe, extending into the spring of 2023. So if we take a look at the overall, all the model guidance, and this is where they came up with the forecast, they actually saw this and said, hey.
Fact number one is that this triple dip La Nina already is favoring this going on through the winter, March, and possibly early April. And usually they adjust these forecasts throughout the year, so this one could be even longer, but let's hope this one's already long enough.
All the model guidance, and most of them predominantly keep it into that moderate La Nina category and continue to remain in that La Nina category, not really going out of it probably until going neutral sometime in your March, April timeframe of this upcoming spring of 2023. And another feature is your overall temperature anomalies. Now, this is the current look, so I'm not really expecting your typical type La Nina or not anything like the last 2 La Ninas. This is going to be a very unique La Nina. We've already been highlighting this with these well below average temperature anomalies in the equatorial Pacific. But this one actually has a positive PDO, which is your Pacific Decadal Oscillation, with this warm blob up here into the North Pacific. Now, what makes this unique is the fact that it's going to be only the third time in recorded history that we've been basically back to back to back La Ninas, what they call triple dip La Nina.
And also, with the PDO being in the positive, I want to point out that that is mainly that is very typical of grand solar minimums. We see that sort of warmer conditions in the Pacific near Alaska and the Northwest Pacific. So with the fact that we have this grand solar minimum type pattern in place, and it's only the beginning, folks. This is not even like 2022 is nothing. What we're going to see between 2030 and 2045 is this is peanuts. But this is just a taste of what's coming. That's the freaky part. And I don't think anybody factored in a few things either, but we'll get into that here in a minute.
And now, the last time we saw this, we'd have to go back 22 years, all the way back from 1999, 2000, and 2001. And then we'd have to actually go back to 1974, 75, and 76. So we've only saw this, two other times in recorded history, so makes this a rare La Nina, and we're going to be in a moderate La Nina stage. Now, what also makes this a rare upcoming winter is this second element, which is your Siberian Snowpack. So we've been talking about the Siberian Snowpack on this channel for the last couple of weeks, starting the step down process and the building stages. And this is the current snowpack for October 13th. It's almost 100% full up in Siberia. That's pretty unprecedented for
That's
this
a big
time
deal.
of year so soon. In fact, if we go back the last 54 years of the current satellite era, we could actually see 2020 for the ending of September is sixth all time. Six all time. So how does that compare to the last two La Ninas? Well, this time last year, back in September, we ended 31 on that list, 31 out of the 54 years. And we go back to 2020, we had actually ended 52 at the end of September. So you can actually see this is well above what we've been the last 2 years. In fact, it's so well above. Look at number one, guys, all the way back in 1977, 78. That stands out because it was actually one of the coldest winters of all time here into the United States, and not in the cold.
I mean, just look at the jump, guys.
So that was a really harsh and unprecedented winter, and it just really amplifies and it extends as we go into October.
I wanted to add real quick too. He mentioned something about he went back to the last 3 years of La Nina, where the Siberian Snowpack ranks. This year it ranks 6th all time. Last year it ranked 31st all time. 2020 it ranked 52nd all time. So when we talk about this global warming, this hothouse theory, that we have this runaway hothouse global warming happening, but yet we're seeing Siberian Snowpack at its 6th best all time in the month of September. Those are drastic. And this is just an example of what a triple dip La Nina can do. Now, he's also said that we've only seen these twice. 2 other times, the 99 winter and the 77-78 winter. I also want to point out, too, that in 1966, we had a massive blizzard across North America that you may recall. So 66, 77, 88, 89, 99. These are all spaced out between 10 and 12 years apart. conveniently during these certain features, also hitting on.
So typically what happens is when you have the beginning stages of a Siberian snowpack, well, I think the driving force is what's going to be unfolding as far as the teleconnections this year is going to be a positive PNA, which is your Pacific North American, and then a negative NAO. We're already seeing the beginning stages of that with some of that colder push anomalies into the United States and some of the coldest temperatures of the season. So primarily, you typically have a ridge that builds over the west and into the Pacific Northwest, and then you have the polar jet buckles, where it buckles into the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. with that blocking feature, that negative NAO over Greenland. So if we look at,
and we are already seeing that as well, the jet stream, and this recently our cold front that we just had across the Midwest now creeping across the East Coast here into the Northeast tonight. Actually, we're in a freeze warning, I should say. 25 is the low for tonight, so everything that grows is officially not going to grow after tonight. This will officially do it for us.
That look at some of the temperature anomalies going to unfold over the next week. We find ourselves with that positive PNA, right? You have that ridge over the west and into the Pacific Northwest. You have the blocking feature over Greenland that allows to pull and buckle that polar jet underneath and have that stretching event of the polar vortex. So we're starting to see the beginning stages of that with some snow flying in portions of Minnesota this morning, and some of the coldest temperatures of the season are going to be felt by the middle of next week for a good chunk of the country. And if we extend that, if we extend all the way in through Thanksgiving with that NAO continuing as a step down process, continuing to buckle, we find ourselves by Thanksgiving week with more ridging building over the top, allowing those colder anomalies to sink underneath, highlighting the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. to having a pretty chilly week going into Thanksgiving. And if we highlight the temperatures of that, it has that blocking over the top, over portions of up into Greenland, and then allows those cooler anomalies. So Thanksgiving week is already looking like a pretty cold air mass is going to be unfolding across heading into your Thanksgiving week. So if we go beyond that, we start to look towards your winter, we look at some of the teleconnections, which is your NAO, right? So we've been highlighting that negative NAO, which is, I think, it's going to be a predominantly driving force. You can actually see it's a step down process now. So we're just at the beginning stages of it, where it starts to turn negative, keeping that polar jet, and starts to buckle and starts to pull some of those colder anomalies down into the United States. And that actually continues to remain negative through December and through January. So, and that just combines with the Arctic oscillation as well. So we find that oscillation going negative as well. So we have the positive PNA, the ridge predominantly over the west and northwest, while much of the central and eastern 2/3 are going to be a colder push with the overall teleconnections with the NAO and the AO going negative, going.
So you've got the triple dip La Nina. You've got all of these cycles, these PDOs, and these Atlantic oscillations and Arctic oscillations also going in the negative. And for the most part, some are suggesting they can get really cold, really deep cold as we get into December, January. So some suggesting, and the thing too about these negative, it shows it going throughout the winter through January, but in each of these maps, we are seeing that current trend of the negative, the positive into the negative. We know what comes, we know what happens next. So he's showing us step by step here, folks. So you got your triple dip La Nina. You've got this Greenland block that, it sounds like this Greenland block doesn't go away anytime soon. It's going to be around for a long time.
Into the heart of winter. Now, a third element, which is an important element, is going to be going back all the way in January of this
is
year,
big.
when that underwater volcano erupted, sending into the off the South Pacific Ocean, sending an unprecedented amount of water directly up into the stratosphere, folks. Now, that water vapor might stay there for years, likely affecting the Earth's climate pattern. Scientists say the massive amount of water that is roughly about 10% of what's normally the amount of found in the stratosphere, that equals more than 58,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. They've never seen anything like it. So the combination of the triple dip La Nina, the elevated snowpack, the early snowpack, the Siberian snowpack, and then combined with all the extra water vapor, what does that look like, right? So if we go up in the stratosphere and we look at some of the water vapor going back for the last 18 years, this is off the charts, folks. That is the extra 10% built up into the stratosphere. It's not even on the chart, right? This is all that deep.
This is huge. What we're looking at is the water vapor that was put into the atmosphere after the volcanic eruption of 100,000 feet into the atmosphere. All of this water vapor, this has never been seen before. This is very unprecedented. It's off the charts, guys. It's white. There's so much, and I'm not just talking about the white after this. I'm talking about right in here, down at the bottom graph where he's got his arrow. That is pointing out all of the moisture, water vapor that has been added because of this. And you're thinking, well, yes, ash plume. But when you have an underground volcano that spews an ash plume as high as this went twice the distance it needed to go to affect the climate. And you're bringing up water vapor into the atmosphere with it. Some reports said 122,000. Some reports said 110,000. Nonetheless, 90,000 and above is well over what we need to see when it comes to volcanic eruptions affecting the climate.
Deep green. Now, typically what happens is when you have that extra moisture, now that we're going into the winter months, that allows the mid-latitudes to start to cool. So when they cool, they allow the polar jet, the polar vortex, to start to wave and start to buckle. So when it's strong, it's basically a perfect circle. It keeps all the Arctic air up in the Arctic. But when it starts to buckle, when it starts to become wavy, it starts to pull that polar jet further south, and that's what's going to happen. So we're already seeing the beginning stages of that, right? With that stretching event that's coming into the United States this week. But I think this is going to be a continuing push. Now, we saw 7 disruptions last year. I think we're going to get more, if not a lot more disruptions, if not splits, coming into this winter with the combination of all 3 elements. They're going to be combined together for this upcoming winter. Now, what does that look like? So if we take a look at the polar vortex, and as we have that blocking over the top, that allows that ridge to set up over that with that positive P&A out west and out in the Pacific Northwest, allows the polar jet to buckle. When it buckles, it pulls down that Arctic air into the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. So I feel like that's going to be the predominant force. Now, if we go back to that Siberian snow.
Well, Taco Cruiser, if you were paying attention, he explained to you with all that water vapor in the atmosphere, how it will allow the mid-latitudes to cool. I don't know if you heard that part. Water vapor, yes, usually does bring in warming, but this is going to be... Look, there are papers out there that show volcanic eruptions have proven to be more of a cooling effect than a warming effect, bringing water vapor into the atmosphere. But when you mix in these negative oscillations, the Arctic air mass that will be present, okay, all that water vapor in the atmosphere that's going to be mixed in with our cosmic radiation, cloud nucleation. So we're going to see really big rains and really big snows this winter, okay? that is going to be because of this water vapor that is going to be present across the globe from this volcanic eruption. And he didn't just say for months, but years. There's enough water vapor in the atmosphere for years. So to me, this is the setup of a perfect storm. So I know this guy's talking about a lot of stuff here, and I invite you guys to come back and watch this video and fast forward through the parts. But this person here, I think, has done the best job breaking down why this winter upcoming is going to be so bad.
Right? So if we look at the last satellite era history, the last 54 years, taking just the snowpack alone of where we are now with that Siberian snowpack, if we look at some of the anomalies, we look at the top 5, right? Top 5 would be, because we're number 6 right now. So 2015, 2017, 2003, we have that harsh winter of 1977 and 1969. So if we combined all that together and come up with the 500 millibar and the height anomalies, we look like this. The ridging over the top with the negative NAO. We got the buckling of the jet stream underneath. We got the coldest push anomalies into the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S., mainly focused on the upper Midwest, the upper Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, pushing east and then modifying as you head further south.
All right, so this guy is repeating everything that I've said since the spring. And that's not why I'm showing this video. I'm showing the video because he just backs up mine and other people's claims about this upcoming winter. This is the best, probably, outlook. And what these are, cold anomalies, we're looking right here in New England, guys. Yes, the Ohio Valley, the Midwestern, the Great Lakes, the upper parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, all through New England, New York. Yes, we are going to see some doozy of a snowstorms this year. More or less, we'll probably see the frozen stuff on the ground, more on the ground than we will melt. But this is what I've been talking about all year long, what was coming our way. And this guy here breaks this down 100%. And then some. He goes above and beyond. There's more. I'll let it go through here.
The central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. If we take a look at the overall temperatures for your winter months for December, January, and February, highlighting those 5, top 5 Siberian snowpack winters, we come up with this, right? We have the main push over the upper Great Lakes, upper Midwest, through the Ohio Valley, shifting east. Still cold into the central and eastern 2/3, but not as cold, not as harsh further north. I feel with the atmospheric river coming back into the Pacific Northwest, that alone is going to be more of a chillier rain for you guys, with much of the West, California, much of the desert
and expect a lot of Alberta clippers too.
Temperatures. So if we take a look at the overall precipitation, I feel this is not going to be like a quote unquote typical La Nina, but we are going to be getting some of those below average precipitation for those 90 days of winter, predominantly in much of the central and southern California, much of the desert.
Sorry, Taco Cruiser, I know you wanted a cold and snowy winter, but it doesn't look good.
And much of just along the coast into the deep south, especially into Florida. Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to get cold down here. It doesn't mean you're not going to get even ice or even some snow. I mean, typically, just to give you an example, in Texas, say in Dallas, they typically average about 8 inches of precipitation over the winter months. Well, just last year, if you recall, they only had 2 inches, right? But you still got cold. You still had some ice around, and it still had some snow. So just because if you're below average precipitation doesn't mean it can't snow. It just means that overall it's going to be, below average as far as those 90 days of precipitation. But further north, I'm expecting above average precipitation, where I feel where the atmospheric river comes back into play for the Pacific Northwest, and with the polar jet dipping down, most of this is going to be in the form of snow, with the harshest winter, I think, elongating over the Dakotas, over the upper Midwest, especially the upper Great Lakes, into the Ohio Valley, and shifting into the Mid-Atlantic, into the into the Northeast. If we take a look at January, heading into January, we start already again going into the heart of winter. We see the blocking over the top with the negative NAO. We allow the polar jet to come underneath. There's the positive PNA out west, allows the polar jet to dip, sending in that Arctic air, the coldest push into the central and eastern 2/3 of the US. Now, another element of these stratospheric warming events. So not only do I feel that we're going to have polar vortex stretchings, disruptions, splits, but we're also going to have that stratospheric warming event.
So this is a general idea of some wind chills to be expecting more frequently this winter. Temperatures in the negative 20s across New York and into New England, negative mid 20s, the negative 30s across the Ohio Valley, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, also into parts of Iowa and Nebraska as well. And then you get into the northern plains, Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northern parts of Iowa. We are talking some severe wind chills coming, but this is the kind of cold blast that we're going to see. And he's talking about stratospheric warming events. Well, let's hear how many he thinks we're going to have.
And if not two of those this year. We saw that back in January 28th, 29th of 2019, where we had that stratospheric warming event. And I think this is where we're going to be seeing the most harshest winter coming up for much of the Dakotas and much of the upper Midwest and upper Great Lakes. This was that event. So I feel like what's coming for this winter, it has the possibility of some of these temperatures dropping as low as 40 below zero up here. And these are wind chills of the actual event that took place with the last stratospheric warming event, approaching 50 and 60 below zero wind chills. I feel some of that could be of the same magnitude. And we get a second one as well. And recall the other one was back in 2020 when it really hit Texas. So I feel like we're going to have two stratospheric warming events this year combined with multiple polar vortex disruptions. So if we take a look at the overall January temperature anomalies highlighting that Greenland block, we find it blocking over the top. We find the main push, right? The main push going into the heart of winter, into the upper Midwest, into the upper Great Lakes, shifting off into the up Ohio Valley, into the Northeast, and then modifying still cold into parts of the Southeast and much of Texas, and then just cool shots as you get towards into Florida, with much of this area remaining above average temperature anomalies. So if we extend the view, so I talked about the negative NAO, so we're beginning the beginning aspects of the negative NAO. I think it continues as a step down process. As we get into November, we're really going to be starting to feel the effects with that blocking feature over the top, setting up the colder air underneath. So it looks to remain negative, and that's going to be the predominant theme going forward into your winter months for November, December, January. You can see it negative even into February, going into March, even back into April. It remains neutral, if not negative, for those months. So if we take a look at the overall forecast, combining all those elements, this is what I came up with the atmospheric
So now that we've concluded this presentation, sorry for the long delay there. I had to take a quick drink. Quiet. What we're seeing here, though, with the combination, and apologies to Taco Cruiser, I misread your comment. I thought you were saying something else. But yes, they could cancel each other out. But the water vapor that is in our atmosphere, combining with all this cold air, and the thing that I found fascinating too was these Greenland, it's back, these Greenland blocks that are going to be in place between now and January, possibly February. And what those Greenland blocks will do is continue to allow the jet stream to be as wavy as it has been, but that also will bring in more polar vortex disruptions. So last year we had 2 stratospheric warming events. We got some winter weather from it here in the States, but I think this year's stratospheric warming events are going to be a little bit different. We're going to have the water vapor present. We're going to have all these oscillations heading into the negative. We've only seen the triple dip La Nina in 2 other different times in history that we can, in satellite history, that is. And what it looks like is we could be heading into a crazy, crazy winter here for us folks here in the purple. I've been saying this since the spring. Like I said, this guy's video did a really good job of explaining to you guys why I felt like that this was the most accurate forecast and the most realistic forecast. Because if you go over to the Weather Channel, they're just like, it's just La Nina. It's going to be like this here. It's going to get cold up here, and it's going to snow, and it's going to do this. And, Weather Channel is just playing it off. Meanwhile, Fox Business reporting that there will be the possibility of rolling blackouts in New England this year. National Grid is already conducting possibility of rolling blackouts across the UK and Germany and other parts of Europe from 4 to 7 p.m. on the weekends. So, yes, they've been talking about the possibility of it for a couple of years now, but there's a lot of things that are in place. For instance, the 2 stratospheric warming events we had last year, we did not have the polar vortex disruptions that we are going to have this year. The jet stream was nowhere near as wavy as it is now. You got the triple dip La Nina to factor in. And I can still go back 8 to 10 years and remember the very, very cold Arctic wind that we got across the Ohio Valley. Daytime highs in 2014 of January was -17 in the daytime. I believe that we could see those kinds of temperatures once again across those areas. Again, in the purple, this is where we're going to see the worst of the winter. Now, like he said in the video, it doesn't mean for you guys in Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas, even far down south, doesn't mean we're not going to see cold or snow or ice. It's possible. We're going to be in the battle zone here in the northern part of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. We're going to see more chances for snow and ice in those areas for sure. But the worst of the worst, and folks, we need to pay attention. Make sure we start conserving better. I know most of you are probably changing the way you buy your food nowadays because of prices. Now we got to watch what we use in heat and energy because especially folks that live up here in those purple areas, we are talking about some really cold weather. And there's going to be a surge in electricity, and we already have a drag in, supply for natural gas as it is. We live in a country that wants to phase out fossil fuels. So, just think if Joe Biden and the liberals had their way today, and we can get rid of fossil fuels, we would all freeze to death and die this winter, pretty much. Here we have some snow moving into the northwest. This is starting off October 25th. That's next week on Tuesday. Colder temperatures across the west. This front will move across into the central part of the United States, and we'll start to regulate normal fall weather once again across the Ohio Valley into the New England area once that low pressure system moves through on October 29th. Other than that, pretty quiet. Northern parts of the United States will see some colder air, some snow at the end of the month. Halloween, yes, some flurries could fly on your trick-or-treat night in Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin. I won't even rule out some parts of Michigan could see some of those wet flakes, as well as Oregon and Washington, Alberta as well, BC, possible snowflakes. North Country, New York, maybe. We got some sprinkles, though, so it could be cold enough for just some flurries. But still, a cold front moving in right on cue for November 1st. Look at that. Where we live, Mario's going to love this. November 1st, the first day of November, we will be cold enough for a chance of flurries and wet snow on that particular Tuesday. More snow for Northern California coming in as well, right on cue for November. And we start to see a couple of cold air mass systems really getting their acts together. And we could be talking about our first major winter storm by the first Thursday of November. Look at this, folks. Across the Dakotas, North Dakota, South Dakota. Watch out. This will be your first blizzard if this forecast holds together. Now, this is way, way far out, so really can't put too much onto this, but it is an idea of what's to come. And let's look at how normal our temperatures have been lately. Across the middle part of the country, still seeing some really beautiful weather in the 70s, low 80s for some of you in Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma and Texas. The majority are in the 60s and 70s across the central part of the United States. Into the Ohio Valley, a very comfortable mid-70s. This is good weather, folks, across all over the United States. But that cold is starting to creep in across the Northwest, and that is this weekend as it starts to warm up across the central part of the United States, that ridge and fridge. We got cold on the back of this front. It's going to stay warm for a couple more days across the Ohio Valley into the Northeast, October 25th into Wednesday. Still seasonably a little bit warmer than usual for this time of year. Heading into Thursday of next week. And then finally, that warmth is slowly slipping away as we get to Friday, October 28th into Saturday and Sunday. Cooler air trying to work its way in from Canada. Finally, by Sunday, October 30th, temperatures will be easing back into the 50s for daytime highs for the majority of the country. And the northern plain states start to see those daytime highs in the 20s and 30s. October 31st. Now, the good news is that we haven't seen a lot of this cold, so the ground's not going to be frozen. We're not going to have a lot of snow sticking, but you can see those warmer temperatures are fighting. I mean, Indian summer wants to happen so bad across most of the United States, but I have a feeling this colder air is going to have a bigger grip on us than the warmer this upcoming winter as well. Things trying to regulate here. But like I said, these are very, very far out, middle of November. This is the 5th of November, so take it with a grain of salt, just a heads up. This is the possibility of the snowfall between now and November 5th. And you can see that we are favoring the North Dakota, South Dakota states for sure. That's where we think that first potential blizzard on the 3rd of November could take place. Those isobars were pretty close and tight together. Tells me we're going to have lots of high winds, snow flying around with zero visibility. So we could see some very, very dangerous conditions for the beginning of November for the folks here in North Dakota and South Dakota, parts of Minnesota as well, and then all across the Northwest Pacific as well. Snow and rain mixing on the very west coast and the north, but mainly inland and the higher elevations, we will see a decent amount of snow. Let's do a La Nina check. Right now, our El Nino conditions are negative 0.853. So we are in a very moderate, almost 1.2 is where it's considered to be a strong La Nina. No indication of temperatures dipping that low, but it's early, and some of those charts that he was showing us in that video has me concerned that we'll continue to see these major dips in these negative parts of these oscillations through the next 3 to 4 months and possibly beyond. So that's going to do it for me tonight, folks. Again, appreciate the patience. We've been away for a while now, and we just thank everyone who is here tonight. I want to thank my wife for running the chat. Robert Hill, good to see you. Rhea, Gary Vertcaver, good to have you as here. A Knife Collector was here earlier. Arnold Schmidt, nice to have you along with us as well. Many, many new faces. Shirley out there. Matthew. Jerome, hello. Good to see you out there. Also, wanted to say what's up to Fishing Magician. He is literally our neighbor. He's like 10 minutes away from our house. And he's got property out in the woods. Guys, if you go to his channel, he's got a constant stream of his woods. So you get to see the snow as it happens, all the wildlife. It's awesome. Let's see. Who else is out here in this chat? Just many, many people. Taco Cruiser again. Accept my apologies. I do apologize. And yeah, it's just good to see everybody in the chat. We hope everyone has been well. Stay tuned to our channel because we are going to come out with more content. I'm not committing to a daily show, but definitely twice a week, if not 3 times a week. I do plan to be on late Sunday evening as well. And we'll do another Grand Solar Minimum update. We'll check out space weather, and then we'll cover some articles, see if we had any earthquake action from my latest watch from today. If something pops off big, you know, I am known to jump on live and cover it. But right now, I think it's tentatively we'll just be seeing each other on Sunday this weekend. So, guys, have a great weekend. Please share this video. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there looking at you like, yeah, right, you say it's going to be cold everywhere. Well, here it is. This is the forecast, I believe, that is going to show just a little bit of what we have in store over the next 30 to 40 years. So until then, guys, take care, be good to each other, and we will talk soon. Take care, folks.